Welcome to the Walton County School District podcast,
Epic Exchanges,
where we peel back the curtain on the Walton County way. Excellence, professionalism, innovation, and collaboration. Greetings, I am Dr. Josh Bledsoe, Public Information Officer for the Walton County School District and your host for Epic Exchanges. Today we are talking all about money and money matters. Imagine that you got your paycheck, all of that money goes into a bank account and you get to decide exactly how you're going to spend it. That's not the case when it comes to a school district. So today I have with me our Chief Financial Officer, Miss Stephanie Hofheinz. Miss Hofheinz, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Dr. Bledsoe. How are you?
I am wonderful. So start us out with just telling us about your journey in finance and educational finance and how you came to be a member of the Walton County School District.
Okay. Well, first of all, I started off at Florida State University. I graduated way back in 1993 with my bachelor's degree. Always knew that I had a passion for numbers from an early age. Um, got involved in state government, worked there for about 10 years, bouncing around some of the different agencies in varying accounting roles. Then in 2003, I was afforded the opportunity to go to Liberty County as their director of finance. That was a great job for me. I spent 10 years as their CFO, learned a lot, found my passion. This job, it's not only dealing with finances and reports, but it's touching lives, and that's what I enjoy about it. So after about 2 more years at DOE, I was afforded the opportunity to come to Walton County as the coordinator of accounting and finance, and then got promoted to CFO back in 2019. And I have loved serving the students and the constituents of Walton County and Mr. Hughes and the board.
Great. So I've opened with the analogy of the bank account, and can you just kind of talk a little bit to the listener about how money, when it comes through the district, and we'll get into all the streams and whatnot, but that it's not just one big pot of money that the district decides how to spend, that there are a lot of earmarked funds and funds that have to be used by certain times. And can you just kind of talk generally about how that's structured?
Sure. Well, Florida school districts are funded primarily through the FEFP, which is the Florida Education Finance Program. It was established in 1973 by the Florida legislature. It is a complex formula that takes your number of students, your FTE through 2 survey periods. It also adjusts for varying program levels and levels of education, and also varying tax bases and standards of living. So after a complex formula, you get a base student allocation, and that's multiplied by your number of FTEs to come up with a weighted student number. And then that number is multiplied by program cost factors, which allows a little bit more than the base student allocation for certain levels of students, like ESE students, depending on their exceptionalities. So the misnomer in public finance, school finance, is that you can use money for whatever you want to, and that's just not the case. We have state funds, which are restrictive. We have legislative acts. We have Florida statutes that govern those funds. We also have varying federal grants that are probably the most restrictive of the funds. If you don't actually write it in your grant application, you can't spend it for those dollars. And then our local tax revenue, which is our least restrictive source, but there are statutes that govern how we spend those funds as well.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I think a community member may see a large project or a large amount of money being spent on a particular initiative and say, well, why don't you just use that money to buy? And that's because we can't do that. It's kind of like a separated or divided highway, right? We can't just change lanes with that money anytime we want.
That's exactly right. And the way Mr. Hughes has explained it is there are 2 primary buckets. You have your general operating bucket and you have your capital outlay bucket. And the capital outlay bucket, those are the funds that are generated through the local capital improvement tax, which is a 1.393 millage, which is only for capital purposes, which means construction, renovation, remodeling, capital expenditures like computers, portable leases, things of that nature. So that bucket of funds cannot be used to pay salaries. They can't be used to buy books. They can't be used to buy supplies for teachers. So they are very restrictive when it comes to that, and much of the public does not understand the difference in the funding levels.
Yeah, you guys have just an incredible amount of detail that you have to lean into, and things that maybe could even be interpreted multiple ways and things of that nature. But I know we do a lot of building, and so you may say, well, you just built a new school, why didn't you take that money and buy new desks or buy books or buy pay for everybody's lunch? And it's like, well, we can't use that money for that.
Right.
And so you mentioned the formula, the complex formula, and my understanding is this is a very complex formula.
Definitely is. It's almost a page long if you put all the components together of how you come up with the base student allocation and the funding for one student in the state of Florida.
So I know you probably we get that question kind of thing, like, well, how much is each student allocate? How much does the state allocate per student? It depends on their grade, and it depends on any 504 IEP that they might have, or exceptionality or anything, and it's just very complex. But when we talk about the money we receive from the state,
Mm-hmm.
relative to our overall budget, about how much percentage-wise are we receiving from the state to do what we do on a daily basis?
This is probably a surprise to most people that are listening, but we receive less than 10% of our operating budget from state funds. And that's not to say that we don't care about what goes on in Tallahassee, because we absolutely do. And we do use those funds very conservatively, and we make sure that we, are good stewards of those funds. But primarily, our funding is driven by local tax revenues. And I like to say that what goes up must come down. So we have definitely seen an uptick in our property values over the last 10 years since I've been here. Actually, an increase of 247%.
Oh, wow.
Our property values have gone from $15.1 billion in 15-16 to $52.4 billion for 25-26.
Wow. Wow. So, and that really tracks with over the last 10 years or whatnot, what we've been able to do when it comes to the innovative educational modalities that we have and the things that we're able to offer students.
Absolutely.
Directly translates. So I think that's an important thing for our community to realize, and for anybody who's looking at the school district going, I think they should, is that most of the funding that we have it's not coming directly from Tallahassee. It's coming from our own community, and we have the charge to be great stewards of that tax money. And so that leads me into we talked first about can't just spend money on anything you want, but I'd really love to get into, well, maybe not too deep because I know it's deep, is pretty much. And I'm going to say with great exception, because I'm sure there is an exception that I don't know about, but pretty much every dollar that gets spent is tracked. Mm-hmm. Being that I am on top of our social media all the time, I see some of these things that so they're buying this and buying that, and I think, well, that's not happening, because every dollar that gets spent is traceable as far as where it was spent, who bought it, and from what company. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that vendor process, how we track expenses, and how each expense is approved or whatnot?
Sure. Well, our financial system that we use here in the Walton County School District is Skyward, and no expenditure that occurs in the district can happen without a Skyward record. So you can either enter a purchase order to make a purchase, or you can use your purchasing card. But either one, they have to be approved by the principal or the administrator. And a transaction has to be entered in Skyward. There is an approval tree that has to be approved before that process can be finished and the purchase can be made. And then there are reports that are generated from all those purchases. Now, Different funds have different numbers. Of course, that's dictated by the DOE Red Book and cost function accounting. But everything that we do is totally transparent. Our vendors are required to be set up in SunBiz. We have to have a W-9 for them. We don't do business with anyone that's not on the up and up. We make sure that we do our homework before we spend any of our money with our vendors.
And so we're looking at everything. Who's looking at us?
Okay. Actually, we are audited every year by the Auditor General's office, and they come in. They're actually here about 6 months out of the year. They do some of their work remote, but there are different programs that they check each year. Like one year they might focus on Title I. One year they might focus on food service. But every year they look at our operational budget. They look at different factors based on what's going on in other districts, maybe some findings that have occurred in other places. They want to make sure that we're not doing the same thing. So we're audited by the Auditor General. Also DOE, they do monitoring of our federal programs and some of our state initiatives, and we have to make sure that everything's on the up and up with them. And then our school internal funds are also audited by an independent accounting firm each year.
So there's really 3 levels of ensuring that we are responsible stewards of the taxpayer money, and be that local or state, is us. And then you've got an auditor, you said an auditor general, and you've got the DOE, so maybe even 4 layers. And then in a separate accounting firm that's looking at our books just to make sure we're doing all the right things. Is that right?
That's right. And not to mention that we have internal controls set up within the finance office and within our financial system to detect fraud, to make sure that no one has too much control, make sure there are compensating controls, just to be sure no one has too much power so that they can't take our accounting system and make it work for them.
Right. And I think that's an important thing for our listeners, is understanding that there are enough checks in place that you may see something purchased, but it has not been done in the shade.
That's right.
Multiple levels of people know about it, and there's a justification for it, be that it's educationally necessity, or it's for the grounds, or it's for the, and so when we talk about vendors, right, I know we're the largest employer in the district, but we're also a large consumer of local business as well. We do buy things from Walmart, and we get our signs printed locally, but
Right.
what kind of, if you were just to guess, about our vendors, how much of the business are we doing locally?
I would probably say maybe 30% local. We obviously try to spend local when we can. There are some instances where we have to go out of the county to get the best price or the best service. And we always want to make sure that we don't look just at cost. We want to make sure that the goods and services that we purchase and provide, are the very best. But we do try to take advantage of local vendors. And Mr. Hughes is a big proponent of that as well. So we do that as much as possible.
Right. And that brings up a great point that about, it's not always just the lowest bidder.
Right.
Superintendent Hughes is about making sure that we have what is best for the students and for our faculty and things of that nature. So I know there's some of those undertones when you're on maybe on the social media side of things, where, well, so and so must have just bid underneath everybody else, and that's not always the way that you're going to get the contract. And I know I know we could loop in Ms. Jill Smith, our facilities director, on this, but if you have any kind of track record of having been substandard, that can certainly play into not making sure that you get that money. So it's not just about not just people coming in lowball and to get a contract. You got to be able to perform.
And there are purchasing rules and guidelines that we must adhere to, and they're more stringent, the larger the contract or the bid is. So we have to advertise those projects, or either we have to search for a state contract, which has already been vetted through the state of Florida, or companies like Sourcewell and other purchasing cooperatives that we can take advantage of, people that have already done the work. They already know. They've already sought the 3 bids, and they've done the comparisons and made sure that they're valid. So a lot of times as a cost-saving measure, we look to those sources as well. But absolutely, a request for proposal isn't always guided by the dollar. A request for qualifications is very important, especially when you're trying to choose a construction manager for a large project. You want to make sure that, they have the experience with building a school. They understand the DOE regulations, not just, someone who builds homes at the beach. There are things that we can and can't do within our classrooms, and there are, restrictions that must be met.
Right. So, when we talk about spending money, most of our money is spent on people. Is that right?
That is correct.
Roughly how much of our budget is allocated toward making sure that the people who are interacting with students are fairly and well compensated for their job?
Okay. According to this year's 25-26 budget, that number is almost 80%. And that's probably much higher than most people realize. And that's kind of twofold. One, that's just the nature of school operations. It takes a lot for a school to run, beginning with the bus drivers in the morning, to the custodians, to the teachers, to the admin. It goes from the bottom to the top. And it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to retain those people. It takes a lot of money to recruit those people. And I think that because we've been able to keep our salaries very competitive, higher than most of the other districts in the Panhandle, probably going all the way south to Ocala. Because of that, we've been able to attract the best and brightest of our instructional staff, especially, who have a direct impact on schools and our students and their achievement, which is how we've gotten to number 2 in the state of Florida.
That's a great testament that about Superintendent Hughes.
Yes.
The salary schedule has increased exponentially since he took over in 2016. And being an educator himself, that is a very valuable thing. That it's people that run the district. And I think most community members will probably be surprised to hear that 80% of the budget is going to the people who are making sure that your student gets a world-class education in Walton County. And we have, I believe, the highest pay in public school systems in the Panhandle for sure. And now educate the audience a little bit that when you take your base salary, which right now is a little over $59,000, it's not if everybody was a first year teacher, it'd be 59 times whatnot, but it's really not that. There's the cost of insurance that that the board so graciously has voted to cover. But what are all the things that get wrapped up in? There's the salary, but then the cost per employee.
Okay. The beginning teacher salary was just increased to $59,000, and that is for a bachelor's degree. Of course, we have varying levels. We have pay for master's degrees, for specialist degrees, for doctorates. So, you get a supplement for that. Also, any extra things that you pick up, like any assignments at schools, like whether you're the school improvement chair, if you want to be a coach of some sport or cheerleading, there's a supplement for that. But a big thing, and this is often forgotten, is the fact that the school board pays the entire employee contribution for health insurance. We have Florida Blue for health insurance and have for some time now. And the board has been able to absorb the increases ever since I've been here. I don't think that's increased for the employee at all. And most every year we do have an increase in the cost of employee health insurance. And the board has been very generous, and they do cover that cost for the single employee. And just a couple of years ago, we also went self-insured for our insurance platform. And that's allowed us to have a little more control and take a little more of the risk. But where there's risk, there's rewards. So, we're hoping that this will be a profitable program. And so far it has been. And we want to look forward to maybe some premium holidays and some other incentives for employees due to this arrangement.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really incredible thing for our employees that the board absorbs that cost. And of course, if you choose the high plan or you bring your family in, you're going to have to pay a little bit out of pocket, but that basis, but especially those teachers that are coming fresh out of school or they're single or whatnot, it's just a really great way to put more money in your own pocket when you're not having to pay that out. And we don't have to do things like give cards to offset the costs and things of that nature. It's a good thing all around. So
And we're hoping to do some things with our insurance platform. We hope to, at some point in the future, add some tiers to our health plan, because right now you can either just have a single plan or a family plan. So we hope to maybe add a single employee spouse, employee child, maybe 4 tiers instead of the 2-tier system, just to assist those families, that do need coverage for multiple family members.
awesome, awesome. Um, so then it's not just about salary. Superintendent Hughes is big on bonuses. And we are very fortunate. Our staff are very fortunate. What's the bonus structure right now? What is it looking at 25-26 school year?
Okay. Well, we just finished negotiations with both of our unions, and we settled with a $4,000 bonus for instructional personnel for our teachers. And that's an A district bonus. That is Mr. Hughes and the board, that's their gift for anyone who was here and contributed to our district grade last year. And that'll be $4,000, half to be given before the first semester ends and the other half before the second semester ends. For ESPs and admin and confidential managerial staff, we will be receiving a $3,000 bonus to be payable $1,500 before the first semester and $1,500 at the second semester. For the past probably 3 to 4 years, we've been able to give some pretty sizable bonuses due to the ESSER funding that we receive from the federal government. We did use that money for some of those purposes, but we also, of course, used it for safety, just to ensure that everyone was as safe as possible and took those safety measures when it comes to COVID and things like that since 2020.
Excellent. So educate me, educate the audience, educate teachers, educate everybody. Why a bonus instead of just raising the salary $7,000 one year?
Okay, that's a great question. A bonus is non-recurring money. So you can give, say, $100,000 worth of bonuses, and it's going to come out of your 25-26 budget, but you don't have to worry about budgeting that for 26-27 and beyond. And the reverse of that, if you give a percentage increase or a flat amount increase for salaries, you have to fund that from now till the end of time. And it just increases every year. So that's why it's very important, especially in a year where the budget is starting to take a downturn, that you spend most of your money on recurring bonuses rather than salary increases.
So once we say your salary's it's that starting salary, your base salary is 62,000, we can't come back next year and go, money wasn't as good this year. Now it's 61. That we can't do that. So we have to find creative ways to make sure that our employees are given what we have, right?
Yes.
And
And that's why it's so important during the strong economic times to retain a healthy fund balance, because you never know what the next year is going to bring, especially this year. We've really started to see a downturn as far as our spending is outpacing our revenues. And this was at no fault of our own. There were lots of cuts in Tallahassee that we were not expecting, people taking advantage of the FES scholarships, that we've taken a big hit with that this year. And also our property values are starting to stabilize. And we've been on an uptick for a long time. And that's why, the board and Mr. Hughes and I, we've operated very conservatively. Of course, we, want to do what's best for education, what's best for kids, but we want a healthy fund balance at the end of the day, because I like to say you're only one catastrophe away from having a financial emergency. So that's just the way that we have to plan. We have to be kind of at the 30,000 foot level, and that's the task that I have of recommending things to the board and making sure I keep them informed.
excellent. And if you're listening and there's maybe a little detail in there that people would not have necessarily picked up on, and that is that educational staff, educational employees got are getting $4,000 in bonuses. If you're not you're not directly in the classroom or in some way interacting with kids as an educational staff, then you are getting 3,000. So that shows superintendent's commitment and understanding that the rubber meets the road in the classroom.
Absolutely.
He tells us that all the time.
Yes, he does. He does. And we never even negotiate any kind of salary increase or talk about a salary increase for anyone else before the teachers are finished or before our support staff are finished. We want to make sure that those people are taken care of. Like you say, they are definitely his focus, which rightly so, they should be. But in addition to the bonuses this year, we were able to give $1,000 to the base for teachers, and then I think it was 75 cents an hour for the ESPs. So still a very healthy raise in addition to the bonuses. So we're pretty excited about where we landed this year.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a great place to work, not just for the monetary compensation, for the culture that's here as well. So I don't want to end on a low note, but I do want to make sure that we cover that in Florida, right, the money follows the child.
Yes.
And this is an important piece in legislation right now. And it continues to be an important piece. We're fortunate in Walton County to have an exceptional public school experience. And it may not be that way everywhere in the state. It may not be, but it is the case here. And it is the case because we've got leadership like Superintendent Hughes ensuring that the right people are in the right room for the right reason. But just give me some numbers on what the ability to take that state allocation for your child and not have it go into the public school system, but have it be allocated privately to parents. What just statewide, we don't necessarily have to get granular into Walton County, but what is that kind of doing to budgets statewide, and what kind of impact does that have on public school?
Okay, that's having a huge impact, and especially some of the larger counties with a larger charter school presence. As you mentioned, our relationship is very positive with our charters. We only have two, but our charter school funding, it does flow through Walton County School District. They report their FTE to the state, and it comes to us, and we pay them monthly based on their proportionate share of the categoricals and other funding and the number of FTEs that they earn. So they had a building project the last couple of years, so they have expanded their presence. Their enrollment has grown by about 120 students over the past year. But I think I mentioned it briefly earlier, but the people taking advantage of the FES scholarships, the Family Empowerment Scholarships, that's been the biggest hurdle that districts have had to leap over this year. There's been lots of talk at finance conferences with the Finance Council, with the legislature, of what to do about this. That is taking money from our coffers, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it from the top to the bottom, from the largest districts to the smallest. It's had a huge impact, and it has had an impact here as well. It reduced our state revenue by $9 million this year. And that's a lot of money. We can do a lot with $9 million in our classroom. So we hope that maybe to see some changes in that legislation going forward, but we really can't control much of that. But what we can do is just continue to allocate resources to recruit and retain the best employees, and to continue building stellar buildings and facilities for our staff and students, and just make sure that we're providing just the best education in Florida.
You know, I don't know exactly how this all works, but I kind of look at that cost, or that allocation per student station, as a sort of a loaves and fishes type story. That while there may be, let's just take an 8,500 as an example, what the student receives from that 8,500 is worth far more than $8,500. And so when we talk about students going to private or homeschool, or that in any way they utilize that Family Empowerment Scholarship, you may be taking $8,500 out of the budget, but in reality, the cost of that is far greater than that.
That is
And there are opportunities for other students who are in the public school system that might not be fully realized because, like we're saying, that $8,500 is worth a lot more once it's plugged into the public school system. And again, I couldn't tell our listeners how that works, but I just know that when I think about a student and an allocation of $8,500, $9,000, something like that a year, and I go, wow, what it costs to educate just one student is, in the way we're translating that into much greater. Just again, it's like the loaves and fishes. It's just amazing what we do.
And what we also have to account for are those students who maybe take a FES scholarship at the beginning of the year. They miss the October FTE survey, so we don't get to count them. And then they come back in November. Well, we still have to educate them. We don't have a choice in the students that we accept. We're a public school system, so we take everybody. So there's some problems with that. Sometimes we don't know the education level that the student has received. So there's some catching up to do. And we definitely spend more in Walton County per student than the $9,000. I think the last report that I saw from DOE, it was somewhere around $18,000 was the average per student that's spent here in Walton County.
Wow, that's we can certainly think like, oh man, that's a low point in the conversation. But I think the making sure our listeners know is, Walton County is an amazing place to educate your children. And, we're the number 2 school district as far as school grades. We're number 3 in academic testing. We're number 1 for the Policy Institute, top 10 in 20 of 21 assessed areas. I mean, it's just an stellar place to go to be educated. It's a stellar place to work. And that certainly is in major part to our leadership and the people that are our leader, the people that our superintendent puts in place, very much like yourself, to make sure that our students have everything that they need and are able to realize some of these things that maybe you would never be able to you would never think a public school can offer that.
Right.
But then you go down to the Magna Innovation Center and you see, no, our kids are able to have just as much innovative, hands-on educational modalities because of the way that we allocate funds. So just mentioning the Magna Innovation Center, that's one of Superintendent Hughes' initiatives that did not exist when he came here and translated into reality for our students. What are some of the other initiatives that Superintendent Hughes has started that our students may not even know, but they benefit from that innovation on his leadership as well?
Okay. Well, the Magnet Innovation Center at St. Joe was definitely one of the big ones. We call it our STEAM school: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We added the A to that because we think that's very important. And I just want to mention, too, that this was a collaboration with us and the St. Joe Company. This would not have been possible without their generosity and donation of land and buildings. So we really appreciate the partnership that we have with them, and Superintendent is super close with them, and we appreciate all their support. But also, and this was early in Mr. Hughes' term, was the creation of the Intensity School, which is at our Wise Center. This was a population, or is a population, of students who are having behavioral issues. Maybe they're behind a grade or two and just need to catch up. They're not doing well in a gen ed setting. These students, before Mr. Hughes came, were winding up at Walton Academy, which is one of our charter schools, and they do a good job as well. But we wanted to make sure that we could capture the FTE for these students, that we could keep them in our district and educate them with our teachers. So Mr. Hughes, this was a vision of his, and we brought it to life, and it is still going, and it educates, I don't have the number of students, but it is a growing number every year. Headed by Mr. Billy Johnson, the principal there. So those are two basic schools that were started. More recently, he created the Freeport Learning Center. Of course, this was at the direction of the board, all of these things. And this allowed us to take the pre-K kids out of Freeport Elementary, where we are constantly growing in the Freeport area. Even though we just did a renovation, Freeport Elementary is already full. So the creation of that center, allows us to have a site where we can teach our pre-K kids as well as possibly some other programs down the road. And then a big one, and this has been a presence over Florida for the last several years, is expanded CTE. Mr. Hughes has, along with staff, has sought out special appropriations through the legislature. Our lobbyist through Heffley and Associates, local girl, Miss Kelly Horton, has helped us secure some of this funding. We've been able to hit all 3 of our high schools. We've got some agribusiness going on in the Paxton area, aquaculture down at Freeport, and a business construction here in Defeniak. So we're doing some great things with those funds. And for employees, we've already talked about the salaries and benefits. But also, Mr. Hughes is mindful of certain areas that we need to kind of have a laser focus on, and that area for the last few years has been transportation because we needed bus drivers. So in collaboration with our unions, we were able to get bus driver incentive bonuses passed. We also have sign-on bonuses in order to attract bus drivers. So things like that, Mr. Hughes has just been really instrumental in making sure that we can have the staff that are needed to educate our kids. Money Motivation Month. This is where we get paid on the last Friday of the month instead of getting paid the last day of the month. It gives us an extra weekend to enjoy our paychecks. This is something that he also set into motion whenever he got here. So we're very appreciative of all the things about Walton County School District. I love working here, and so blessed that that this journey it brought me here, and I just feel incredibly grateful.
Well, I think that is an excellent way to cap off this episode. Thank you, Miss Hofheinz, for being here. And we will see all of you next time on Epic Exchanges.
Thank you.